And as we mentioned, a long list of businesses are allowed to stay open as of midnight tonight. And there seems to be no specific rules from the province, though we heard the Premier say that businesses do have to keep staff safe. Still, some are concerned there aren't enough measures in place to ensure those who have to go to work are protected.
People with kids or people who are sort of, living with parents and stuff, they're kind of deciding, well, do I want to have a paycheck or do I want to risk my health?
This Ontario man who's asked us to protect his identity was surprised to learn the lawyer's office where he works will be allowed to stay open. With clients coming in and out, he's concerned about a lack of protocol about interacting in close quarters.
But I don't really like the idea of having to go to work in an environment that's not really supervised. We don't really enforce social isolation. Some people take it more seriously than others, and it's kind of left to the staff to kind of police themselves.
Businesses, they have to use their judgment and their common sense. We can't, go around and inspect tens of thousands of businesses.
That was the message from Premier Ford when asked what the province is doing to ensure safe workplaces. His advice to Ontario employees:
you don't feel safe, you walk off the site, you can call the Ministry of Labour as well.
But one employment lawyer says it's not that simple.
You can't simply refuse to work just because there is a pandemic. It has to be circumstances that are specific to you and your workplace. You can refuse to work if there's a legitimate threat to your safety.
Stuart Rudner says employees have always been allowed to refuse unsafe work in Ontario, but defining that in the time of a pandemic is a new challenge. He says fear of exposure to COVID-19 from taking public transit likely wouldn't be grounds to stay home from work, since an employee could find another means of transportation. But being forced to interact with others during a pandemic, if you're part of a vulnerable group, could potentially be the basis for sick leave.
If someone is immunocompromised or living with someone that is, or someone that is vulnerable, that's going to be a factor in assessing whether you are in an unsafe work environment. And I know a lot of people are getting notes from their doctors essentially saying that it's unsafe for them to be at work in these circumstances.
He says employers have an obligation to provide a safe work environment and recommends they protect themselves from liability by adjusting workplaces to allow for the recommended 2-meter separation between people.
Staggering shifts, having certain people work certain hours, and having as few people in the workplace at the same time as possible. As well, keeping people physically separated. So that can mean, for example, if you go into a grocery store, it's only every second or third checkout line that's open.
Rudner says employees should also be allowed to use personal protective equipment if possible, and most importantly, spaces should be cleaned and sanitized more frequently. Finally, he recommends concerned staff address their issues with their employers and document any requests for accommodation or safety measures before refusing work and contacting the ministry or an employment lawyer.